Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my living room. My name is Jennifer, and I'm a teacher at English in the City Prazo. And this morning we are live on YouTube and on our Facebook page. And we're going to be doing a focus activity. This morning we are doing focus activity 810. Entitled School Days. Now, for the past several days, we've traveled far and wide. We've traveled around the world. We've practiced going to cafes and pubs. We've also gone to the supermarket and we've gone shopping. But today, instead of taking a trip, we're going to take a trip back in time and we're going back to school. We're going to talk about our school days and the habits that we used to have when we were younger. Good morning, Katya. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's a beautiful morning, and I hope you're doing fine. Good morning, Ginevra. Thank you also for joining me today. For those of you just tuning in, my name is Jennifer, and good morning, Eric. It's nice to hear from you also. I hope everybody is good this morning. For those of us who have finished our school days, we'll be reminiscing, maybe feeling somewhat nostalgic. And for those of us who are still young, good morning, Andrea. Thank you so much. It's so nice to hear from everyone this morning. And for those of us who are still young, we can remember our school years, our recent school years. So this morning's focus activity 810, we are going back to school. We're remembering what our school was like, remembering the habits that we had when we went to school. We're going to talk about things we used to do and things we would do and what's the difference. So for some of us, it'll be a trip far back in time. And for others in the group, it'll be more in the present tense. So is everyone ready to go back to school? Thank goodness we have these focus activities so we can keep our minds and imaginations active during this time. During this focus activity, we are remembering our school days. We are using used to and would, school, and phrasal verb vocabulary. Okay, for those of us who are still in school, if you're still in school, tell me what class you are in and what some of your favorite subjects are. For others, like myself included, who have finished school many, many years ago, were you a good student? When you remember back on your school years, are they happy memories? Do you smile when you remember certain people or certain events? Or are you so thankful that you are now an adult and you never have to live through that experience again? On a personal level, I loved going to school. I was a good student. I liked studying. I liked taking exams. I enjoyed learning new things. And I pushed myself very, very hard because I happen to believe that without an education, things are much more difficult. Thank you, Ginevra. Ginevra says, I'm in the 3rd year of secondary school. Ah, very good. So right now you're doing a lot of on-school learning, online learning, sorry. So you take a lot of classes on the internet. Do you prefer going to school or do you prefer studying online? And Eric says, I'm in 5th grade of elementary. Okay, so this is an important year for you too, Eric, because in September, you'll be going to middle school. So it'll be a new experience. You're still in school, but a new experience in school. And Kathy says, I have, yes, you have memories because had is a little dark, Katya. I have beautiful memories of school. Me too. I know that the school experience, the American school experience is much different. But we had a lot of school dances, we had school parades, a lot of sporting events because the sports in American high schools are very, very important. And it gave me the opportunity not just to meet new people, because my high school was very big. We had over 4,000 students in the school, but it gave me a chance to try new things. And thank you, Andrea. I was a clever squire. Although the squire, I had a professor in high school that told us, we were a very small group in high school that were very, very serious students. We were so serious that we had parties, but our parties were for studying. We had study parties so that we could pass an exam. And one of our professors, I remember telling us when he was yelling at us about something, he says, you have to remember that you are the top percent. And you see all these other people, they are going to be working for you, he said. In some cases, it was true. In my case, no. Okay, Katya says, I meet some of my classmates nowadays. You do. It's very strange when you meet people after so many years. Good morning, Terrence. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you're fine. And good morning, John Marco. This morning, you guys are right on time. This morning's focus activity, we are talking about school. And right now, we're remembering a little bit. Some of the members of the group this morning are still in school, so they can fill us in on what school life is like nowadays. And for the rest of us, we're reminiscing a bit, talking about what it was like when we went to school some years ago. So do you remember school fondly? Do you have good memories of school if you have finished school? And if you're in school now, do you like school? Not everybody does. Not everybody remembers. Not everybody understands how important school is. Even if you don't like it, it is important. School days. What kind of school did you go to? Now, when you come up with answers for these questions, try to form complete sentences so that we can go over the grammar structure together. And just put your comments in the conversation box over to the right so that everyone can have a look as to what you're saying. So the first question is that we all are going to consider together. What kind of school did you go to if you're finished? And if you're still in school, what kind of school do you go to? Because there are different types of schools. There are public schools, there are private schools, and there are religious schools. What's the difference? Public is the school that you pay for with your taxes, meaning everybody can go. You live in the town, you can go to the school. Private schools, on the other hand, can be far away in a different town or a different city, but you pay to go. So if you say, well, you know what, there's a wonderful school in that town that I really want to go to, you can go. You just have to pay. And then there are religious schools for any type of religion where the religious instruction is part of the curriculum. So as you study math, science, literature, music, there's also religion classes depending on the religious school that you go to. Oh, thank you, Katya. Katya says, I attended public school for accounting. I also went to public school. I went to public school all through high school, And then I went to a private university. So it was a little bit more expensive. Terrence says, I go to school in Chiconini and it is private. Okay, so you go to a private school in the city. Very good. Thank you so much. So we know that for if you decide to go to a private school, sometimes it can be a little difficult because if the private school is a good school, there's competition to get in. If the private school is a famous private school, it can be expensive. And Andrea says, my best memory is that I got some scholarships that allowed me to go to Germany to study German. Fantastic. That's something that I think should be available to more students, the opportunity to get a scholarship. Ginevra says, I go to San Nicolo and it is private. Yes, it is. And both schools, San Nicolo and Cicconnini, are in the historical center. Thank you very much. Okay, now Andrea mentioned something important, that he got a scholarship. What's a scholarship? A scholarship is when you do something very well, Cicconnini, and thank you, Terrence. And when you do something very well, the state or the school gives you money to go to the university or to go to another school. For example, I was a very studious student in high school. So I achieved a certain grade average. I then wrote to my state and I said, please give me money because I want to go to university. Then I went to the university and I said, please give me money because I want to study here. So because my grades were high, the state gave me money to go to university. And because my paintings were good enough, the university, the art university, gave me money to study with them. If it hadn't been for scholarships, I would not have had the opportunity to study at university. Hello, good morning, Elena. Thank you for joining us today. This morning, we're talking about school. And what kind of school did you go to? Did you go to a public school, a private school, or a religious school? For those of us remembering school, and for Ginevra, Terrence, and Eric who are in school, what was your favorite subject? Or what is your favorite subject? You can have more than one. So after you tell me what your favorite subject or favorite subjects are, tell me what your least favorite. So it's one subject that you really, really love and another subject that you don't enjoy at all. My favorite subjects in high school, because in every school it changed, my favorite subjects in high school were art, literature, and science. I had a fantastic science professor. I enjoyed chemistry. Good job, Terrence. Terrence says, English is my favorite subject. Excellent. That's exactly what I want to hear. And Eric says, I go to Gandhi a public school, and next year I will go to Beata Giovanna, which is private. Okay, so your primary school or your elementary school, Eric, is public, and then when you go to middle school, you'll be in a private school. Thank you very much. And Ginevra, thank you. Your favorite subjects are English and Spanish. So you are into languages. Very, very good. What about least favorite subjects? My least favorite subject was math. I did not like math. And I think math is fascinating. It's a fascinating, fascinating subject. But mentally, it's very difficult for me to keep that kind of order It's very challenging. And I end up getting frustrated and I just say, forget it. What difference does it make? 2 plus 2 is 4. That's enough. So my favorite subjects were art, literature, and science, and my least favorite was math. But I admire mathematicians because I think they're just so smart. After we've talked about what our favorite and least favorite subjects are, what else were you good or not good at? Because in the American high schools, you had your classes, so they were obligatory classes, and then we had clubs and other activities. So you could play sports, and they had social clubs and different activity clubs. For example, we had a photography club, we had a ceramics club, we had a debate club, so we learned about politics and how to have a political debate. Thank you, Katya. Katya says, my favorite subject was science and my least was German because my teacher was very severe and made me hate the lessons. You should have gotten a scholarship like Andrea and gone to Germany. German is a very difficult subject, though. I completely understand. My son is studying German now. Elena says, I'd always attended public school. I didn't have a specific favorite subject. I really loved studying. So Elena was a very good student. That's a very good quality to have, to appreciate the technique of studying, because it helps you later on in life, especially when you get a job. It's important to want to know new things and to be good at what you do. So as I was saying, that in the American school system, we had clubs and sports and other activities. So it was possible to learn something through extracurricular activities. You could learn about photography, you could learn about politics, you could learn about carpentry, which is working with wood. We had a club in our school that built a house. And so that later on, these groups of carpenters would build houses for people who needed homes in the town. Genevra says, yes, in fact, next year I'm going to linguistic because I like languages very much. Excellent. So now, Genevra, you have, how many languages do you have? You have Italian, which is the language of your heart and soul. You have English and Spanish. Very good. The more languages you learn, the easier it is to get other languages. I actually had a friend when I moved to Florence, and he speaks 4 or 5 languages fluently. And he has this brain that if he hears a language, he can pick it up and start speaking like in 20 minutes. He's fantastic. Studying foreign language is very important, not just for the language. It's good for your brain, Ginevra. It makes your brain elastic so that you can do anything afterwards. You can do music, you can acquire another skill because your brain is so used to changing and moving and evolving. Good girl, Ginevra. I'm so proud of you. Okay, now we want to talk about used to and would. What's the difference? These are both terms that we use with the past tense. So we're always in the past, whether we say used to, and we're always in the past when we say would, depending on the context, because we know would is a modal verb. So we could also use it in the phrases, for example, if I had $1 million, I would buy a house. We could also use it with conditional sentences, but in this case, no. In this case, we're in the past, and we're going to see how to use it. We can use used to in the past to talk about something that was true but isn't anymore. So think about things that happened in the past or that were in the past, but they're not anymore. For example, in the back of my house, there used to be a plum tree. In the back of my house, there used to be a plum tree. What does that mean? That means right now, there is no tree. But before, there was. So we can use it to talk about something in the past that was true, but isn't anymore. Or, we'll see in a minute. For example, I used to be shy, but now I'm more confident. We can use used to also talking about ourselves. For example, I used to play sports, but now I don't. So you can also use used to talk about past habits. And here we go. You can also use used to talk about something which happened regularly in the past but doesn't anymore. So you can use used to talk about a routine or a habit that you used to have that you don't have anymore. For example, I used to smoke. Yes, I did. Because I thought I looked so cool, with my little cigarette. So I used to smoke, not a lot, but just a little bit. But now I don't because I realize that smoking isn't really good for you. Yep. Thank you, Eric, for your comment. And here's an example of used to for routines or habits. I used to skip classes with my friends and go to the mall. Thank you, Katya. Katya says, I used to have lunch at my parents' home, but now I don't. There are a lot of habits, Katya, that were interrupted. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. I used to do a lot of things too. Now I don't. Oh my goodness. What are we going to do? Wood is usually nostalgic. So what do we see here? That when we use used to, we're in the past about something that was true, but now is not, or a routine or a habit that we don't have anymore. I said I used to smoke, now I don't. There used to be a tree in the back of my house, but now there isn't. And wood is nostalgic. For example, we would stay after school and hang out for hours. Sometimes used to and would are interchangeable, meaning you can use either or in the same sentence. But there is a difference. Oh, Kathy, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just have my mom. I just have my mom now, but she's very far away. Oh, Katya, I'm sorry. Our parents are always our parents, right? And here we have used to plus the infinitive. This is the grammar structure. This is the grammar structure that we're talking about here. So when we use used to, we have the infinitive afterwards. Notice this. I used to be. We have the bare infinitive. I used to be shy. Or I used to skip. Skip is the bare infinitive. And we also use the bare infinitive after would. We would stay, not we would to stay. We would stay after school. But the difference between used to and would is the sentiment behind it. I know. You're not that much older than me. I'm 48. So sometimes when I see my mom, it's like, what happened? Because I always see my mom. This is a short story, and then we'll get back to the lesson. I have a memory of my mom when I was really short, because I was so short that standing in the kitchen, I couldn't see the sink in the kitchen. I couldn't see the counter. So I was short. I must have been maybe 3 or 4. And I asked my mom the famous question, Mommy, how old are you? And my mom said, "Ah, I'm 28." I'll never forget that. So for me, there's a part of me, I always see my mom as 28. It's strange, isn't it? I know, but the older we get, we can't slow down time, unfortunately. All right, let's go over some of our school vocabulary. Oh, Terrence, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, honey. That's sad. We realize, especially now, I think that now during this period where we're at home and we have to think about things because there are less distractions. It gives us time maybe to think about things that are sad. I'm sorry, Terrence. Especially now because we're in our homes and we can't go see people that we want to see, or if something happens, we know that we can't just get in our car and drive to them if they need us, because we have to stay where we are, and that's very, very frustrating. It's extremely frustrating. Okay, and we have our school vocabulary now. On the right side of your screen, you're going to see some phrases about school. Pupils, students, which we know are the same thing. A pupil is a student is a pupil. We have truant, or to skip school. It means there's a class at 10 a.m., but do you go? No. Maybe you're at the bar having coffee. That means you skip your class. To be a troublemaker doesn't mean you're bad, but it means you're a little bit or active, maybe very vivacious, and you distract the class. Sometimes troublemakers are funny. Sometimes they're very funny. And then you have a nerd. What's a nerd? A nerd is a person who always studies, doesn't do anything else, and sometimes they're a little strange. I was not a nerd. Well, maybe a little bit. Maybe I was a little bit of a nerd. And the teacher's pet. And well behaved. Let's go through our sentences. How are we going to do this activity? Give me the number and then give me the term. For example, write number 1 and then the word that goes in the blank. Eric, are you a nerd too? I'd like to think I wasn't a nerd, but I was. I was a nerd. But I was a nice nerd. I mean, I wasn't the kind of nerd that people would beat me up and be like, "Oh, you're such a nerd." You're not a nerd. Okay. I was, Eric. I was. So number 1, okay, Eric, you're not a nerd. You're not. I was a nerd. I'm not anymore. I used to be a nerd, but now I'm not. Let's take a look at number 1. I was a big in school. I would get straight A's every semester. So give me the number and the word or the term that goes in. Yes, Katya, thank you very much. The first is a nerd. That's me. Woo! Thank you, Gianmarco. Number 1, a nerd. Am I the only nerd in the room? No one else was a nerd in school. We have classes in school. There's the students are divided into categories, and you're either in the A crowd, the B crowd, or the C crowd. I'll explain what that means in a moment. Number 2, I was so no one liked me except the teacher, of course. I thought other were just jealous, but I was probably very annoying. So in number 2, we have 2 answers. I was so no one liked me. Just the teacher liked me. Like a teacher likes her dog. Yes, nerd is a very intelligent person, Terrence, that's true. But sometimes a nerd can be very intelligent, but also a person that's socially strange, meaning they don't have friends. All they do is study. All they do is study. All they do is study. And you say, "Oh, well, would you like to go out and eat a pizza?" No, I have to study. Thank you, Ginevra. Number 2 is teacher's pet. And because we see that at number 2, there's another answer also. Very good. So number 2 says, I was a teacher's pet, so no one liked me except the teacher, of course. I thought other. So think about the other people in the class with you. I wasn't a teacher's pet. I used to get into arguments with the teachers. But real arguments, not like, punching fights, but we used to argue because I was saying, you know what, I don't think that's right. Students, thank you very much. So the second blank is students or pupils. I was the teacher's pet, so no one liked me except the teacher, of course. I thought other students were just jealous, but I was probably very annoying. Thank you, Katya. Number 2 is teacher's pet and students. Thank you, Ginevra, and thank you, Katya. Let's go on to number 3. If you were in the A crowd in high school, in American high school, means you were part of that group of students that was all beautiful and popular, and everybody wanted to be their friend. So a lot of the popular boys in the A crowd, they played football, they played basketball. They were the athletic boys that were very, very good looking. And they usually had a very beautiful girlfriend, the girlfriend that was the cheerleader, rah, rah, rah. And these were the people that everybody would look at and say, oh, wow, I wish I could be friends with them. That's the A crowd. Oh, thank you, Katya. We're on to number 3. Number 3 is troublemaker. I had a ton of friends, but I was a big troublemaker and used to really torture my parents, teachers, and even friends. Notice also the way we use used to and would in these sentences. And if you were in the B crowd, you were usually a good student. You aspired to go to college or university. Thank you, Eric. But you weren't as popular because you were in school because you wanted to study, because you wanted to learn. So I was part of the B crowd. My brother was in the A crowd. So was my sister. They were so popular. Everybody loved them. And then the C crowd were those group of kids that were like, they had they listened to punk music and they had the colored hair. That was the C crowd that were in this constant state of flux. Let's take a look at number 4. I was mostly except for occasional to go surfing. So for number 4, we also have 2 answers for number 4. Number 4 is well behaved and skip school. Thank you very much. And thank you, Ginevra. Thank you, Katya. Well behaved and skipping school to go surfing. When I was a senior, that was my last year of high school, we had a day called Senior Cutout Day. And you have to realize that in the class, in my senior class, we were 480 something students. And we all cut out of school. I think maybe 20 kids went to school because we said, okay, we're going to have senior cutout day, meaning none of us go to school. Every year they do it. And every year the principal says, don't cut out of school. And every year the senior class does it. And we would go to the beach and have a barbecue. We'd go to the park and have a picnic. We would just spend all day out. That was the only day I cut out of school, the only day. Here we have break time. Use used to or would to talk about what you did at school during break time. What's break? Break is recess. The sports you played and now don't, and what you were like at school. Let's take a look at some examples. I used to play basketball, but quit because of an injury. So here, if we want to divide the activity a little bit, we can use used to first, and then we'll use would. So let's talk about things that were true when we went to high school. Or for those of you like Ginevra, Terrence, Eric that are still in school, you can talk about maybe your previous school. For example, if you're in high school, talk about middle school. If you're in middle school, talk about elementary school. And if you're still in elementary school, talk about the beginning of school. For example, Eric is in the 5th grade, so he can talk about first grade or second grade. Ginevra, we know, is already in high school. So, Ginevra, you can tell us about middle school. And Terrence, also, you're in middle school as well. So you could talk about elementary school. I used to study at my classmates' home. I used to study at my classmates' home. Thank you, Katya. You're still in middle school. 3rd year middle school, so you're not in high school yet. Okay, so Ginevra, if you're still in middle school, then you could talk about elementary school or primary school. What used to be true when you were in primary school? For example, I'm really old now. But I used to, as Katya said, she used to study at her classmate's house. I used to have study parties with my classmates. In fact, there was a huge exam that we had to take in order to go to university, and it took a year to study for the exam. That's okay, Katya, because writing and speaking are 2 different exercises. A lot of times we'll say things correctly, and then when we go to write it down, it comes out in a different way. You should see how I write in Italian. It's unbelievable. And it's so frustrating because sometimes I think I know something, and this is after 20 years of being here. I have no excuse. What was I saying? About I used to have study parties, and this exam in high school, we needed 1 year to prepare. So we used to have study parties every single month. We would have maybe 2 study parties a month to prepare for the exam. So that's a routine or a habit that I used to have in high school. I used to have study parties. Anyone else? Did anyone else have any habits or routines in school that now they don't have? I also used to be very athletic. I used to be very athletic and very sporty. I used to play, we had 4 seasons. Well, there are 4 seasons anyway, but during the school year, which is from September to June, there were 4 sports seasons. And I played a sport every single season. In fact, that's how I lost weight, because I used to be really fat in high school. I was really fat. It was huge. Okay, here are some examples. The grammar example, I used to play basketball but quit because of an injury. And here we have different topics: pupils and students, truant skips school, be a troublemaker, nerd, teacher's pet, or well-behaved. So we want to come up with sentences as we saw in the previous slide. All right, to remember this slide here, we have examples of used to and would in this slide. I was a big nerd. I would get straight A's. And I was mostly well behaved. No. There's no used to here. But in some of these, they're examples of used to and would. Does anyone else have any examples of habits or things that they used to do in school, but now they don't? For those of you who are in middle school, is there anything that you used to do in primary school that now you don't? And it could be something simple. For example, In primary school, my son used to have breakfast before school. Now he has breakfast in the morning during recess. So he doesn't have breakfast at home. He'll have breakfast at school because now he's in middle school. And he doesn't like to have breakfast too early. All right, I know that during this morning's focus, I've talked to you a little bit about school days and the differences between American schools, the US school system, and the Italian school system. Let's take a look at this text and we'll talk about it together, okay? The US school system, schools are generally divided into kindergarten, elementary school, grades 1 to 5. So when I ask you what class are you in, these are the classes, 1 to 5, middle school and high school. Oh, thank you, Katya. Katya says, I didn't used to play sports, but I do now. Excellent. Very good. Because I know it's difficult to play sports in the Italian school system. You have to play sports privately. They don't really have teams. The schools don't have teams. Whereas in the US school system, the schools have teams. Your team has a name. And we did all the sports. We did field hockey, tennis, soccer, football, basketball, volleyball, handball, swimming, and we did track and cross country. So we did long distance running and short distance running. And my father would take me to school. Your father would take you to school. Because here, even though they have public buses now, the majority of kids go to school by car with their parents. Whereas in the US, we have a tremendous public transportation system and we have just school buses. If you've ever seen in films the giant yellow buses, those are just for school. Okay, let's continue in our text. In elementary school, pupils learn the basics of reading, writing, grammar, mathematics, and science, along with some music or art. They are graded on a letter scale. So we don't have numbers, we have letters. A plus being the best, to F being fail. D is the lowest passing grade. So if you get a D, you can still move ahead. But if you get an F, no. In middle school, pupils can begin taking a foreign language as an elective. So you can choose to take a foreign language as a minor subject. Your major subjects, meaning those which are most important, are reading, writing, grammar, mathematics, and science. Your minors, which are less important, and I don't agree with this, are music, art, and language. Pupils can also choose a subject of personal interest from among choices like photography, woodshop, dance, and orchestra. Every school also has a band or an orchestra, so you play an instrument. You start playing an instrument in elementary school and you continue that instrument all through high school if you choose. And that way you can also go to a music university or a conservatory because you've already been playing an instrument. I started playing an instrument when I was 9 and I played all through high school. I stopped because I decided to paint instead of playing an instrument, but I was in the school band as well. Okay, now, since I've been talking about my school experiences in the US, what differences do you notice between the US school system and the Italian school system? And these are great questions for Terrence, Ginevra, and Eric because you're still in school now. How are you going to answer this question? In the US, they, but in Italy, we. For example, in the US, we finish school at 18. We finish school at 18. Whereas in Italy, we finish school at 19 because we only have 4 years of high school. We have 9, 10, 11, and 12, and then you finish. Middle school is divided into 3 years, 6, 7, and 8. And we see that the primary school or elementary school is grades 1 to 5. Before elementary school, you get 1 year of kindergarten. You don't have 3 years like we have here. We have 3, 4, 5. And then when you're 6, you go to elementary school. In the US, no, you start in kindergarten. So what are the biggest differences that you notice between the US school system and the Italian school system? Thank you very much, Katia. Katia says in Italian schools, there aren't musical bands or sporting teams. And this is very important to note because music is extremely important. I think a lot of, not just here in Italy, but some schools underestimate the importance of it. As we know that Ginevra is studying several languages and she's going to continue studying languages. Studying languages is extremely important, and so is music. They're linked also in cerebral activity. A lot of times people who speak many languages are also musically inclined. Little bit of fun fact there. Does anyone notice any other differences between the school systems? For examples, in the US school system, we're graded with letters. A, B, C, D, and F. In the Italian school system, however, you're graded with numbers, 9 or 10 being the highest, and 6. How does the grading system work here, Ginevra, Terrence, and Eric? What's the highest grade you can get, and what's the lowest? Can you get a 2 or a 3? That's interesting, because I thought that under 6 was passing or failing. We notice here from the text, however, that there are a lot of differences in the school systems. I won't say that one is better than the other. I won't say that. I will say, though, that it depends. They are only private activities. Very true, Katia. Thank you. So if someone, a student, or parents choose to involve their child in music or sports, then this is a private activity, so they have to pay. And it takes up a lot of time too. And if you have more than one child, it can be expensive. Thank you, Ginevra. Ginevra says, yes, you can get a 2. And Eric says, yeah. But Eric, do you get 2s? I hope not. 2 is not good, because if 9 or 10 is the best, then 2 is really, really bad. As I was saying before, I don't think that one system is better than the other. I think a lot of it depends on the dedication of the teacher. If you have a good teacher, it doesn't matter where you are. Ginevra says, no, but not in middle school or elementary school. Ah, okay. So you can get a 2 once you get higher in school, but in elementary school and middle school, no. Thank you very much, Ginevra. I didn't know that. All right, here we have our phrasal verbs, our fabulous, fabulous phrasal verbs. Okay, thank you. Not in middle school or elementary school, but in high school, yes. Why? Because in high school, you can fail. Katia says, when I finished the school system of graduation was in 60-60, and it was the maximum. I managed to get a 43-60. That's good, though. That's still like that's in the upper percentage, because obviously getting 60-60, and I know that the Italian school system also before, it was very rigorous and the exams were very specific. It didn't give you much leeway, much room to maybe give a different idea. And also the idea for the final exam in high school, where you have all of the professors in front of you and you have to give a type of presentation, is very, very, very difficult. I think it'd be very difficult. Okay, let's go over phrasal verbs. We know that phrasal verbs are what? Phrasal verbs are when you take a verb and a preposition and you put them together and they make a whole new verb. Phrasal verbs you cannot translate. You have to memorize what they mean because if you translate them, they do not make sense. We have phrasal verbs at school. Let's match the words to the correct definition. On one side, we have a list of phrasal verbs, and on the other side, we have our definitions. We're going to match one to the other. For example, drop out, to leave education early. So when someone says in English, oh, she dropped out, we know that we're talking about school or some other type of competition. So you drop out if you are a dropout. If someone says, oh, she is a dropout, it means that she left school. She stopped studying. She did not finish. Eric, good job. You always get 9 and 10. Good for you. You're a very good student. I'm so proud of you. Okay, let's take a look at our phrasal verbs. We want to connect the phrasal verb to the definition. Play around. Play around. What does play around mean? We have our definitions here on the right. To feel like you belong somewhere, which is a very human need. To advance to the next level. To have fun and not take things seriously. To report something to an authority figure. To study one topic intensely. These are pretty complex definitions. Let's see if we can find the definition for play around. Now, it doesn't mean to play a game or to play a sport. To play around means to have fun and not take things seriously. Thank you very much, Katya. So if you play around in school, chances are you're not studying, you're not taking school seriously, and you're just having a good time. There's nothing wrong with having a good time, but you need to study also. It looks like this might be our last slide for this morning. Move up. What does it mean to move up? To move up. In fact, it's something that the students in elementary school and middle school don't have to worry about because they are moved up automatically. Once you get to high school, it is not that easy. It's not that easy. Move up means to advance to the next level. Thank you very much, Katya. Thank goodness you're here. So we know to drop out means to stop studying, to play around means to have fun, to move up, to advance to the next level. So to go from one class to another. So if you're in middle school, you start your first year, you move to your second year, and you move to your third year. You move up to the next class. Swat up on. This is a term that Americans do not use. To swat up on. If we don't know what swat up on means, then let's skip to tell on or to fit in. Sometimes there's a problem in school, especially with the younger children. There's always one child who, if something's happening, oh, teacher, that boy, he just took out a pencil. Oh, teacher, that boy, that girl, just, she's eating a cookie. Oh, teacher, that boy, he just got up and went to the bathroom and didn't ask anyone. There's usually one in every class. There's usually one in every class. Because I'll tell you what swat up on means. I don't know if anyone knows. It took me a while to get this one too. To swat up on means to study one topic intensely. Thank you, Katya. Thank you for your comment. But to swat up on means to study one topic intensely. I think in English we say, not to crash, to crunch, cram. We cram. That's what we do in American English. We cram. We cram for an exam. Cram means you take the final days before the exam and you study really, really hard. So in the UK, they SWAT up on. In the US, we cram. Tell on. Tell on. Can I write it, please, to cram? Absolutely. Cram for an exam. Cram. You cram for an exam. It means you study very, very hard and a lot. Usually you cram because you have not studied all semester. So you say, okay, now I have 1 day left. I have to cram. And it would be better if you studied all along. You're welcome, Katya. Do we know what tell on means? The phrasal verb tell on. What does tell on mean? I gave you the example of the child that's always talking to the teacher or talking to some other person about the other students in the class. And sometimes it's very frustrating because you say, oh, every time I do something, there's Johnny to report. Very good. To report something to an authority figure, but excessively. That's a snitch if you do it excessively. So we know here that fit in means to feel like you belong somewhere. And that's something that a lot of kids, thank you, John Marco. John Marco also says tell on means maybe, no, absolutely, to report something to an authority figure. Usually we tell on a brother or a sister. For example, who finished the milk but did not throw the container in the garbage? Oh, that was Brother Billy. He did that. It means you tell on somebody. Okay, now we want to fill in the blanks. This is going to be our last slide for today, I think. We want to fill in the blanks with our phrasal verbs. So this morning we were talking about school days. We went over would and used to. And now we're filling in the blanks with our phrasal verbs. Do you remember what our phrasal verbs mean? All right, as we go through our sentences, give me the number and give me the phrasal verb. For example, number 1, I couldn't to the next grade because I failed all my subjects. I had to repeat the 4th grade. We said that this is something that does not happen in elementary school and middle school. You automatically go to the next class. But in high school, you can be left back. Left back means you have to repeat the year. You have to take that class again because your grades are not good enough. So looking at sentence number 1, I couldn't to the next grade because I failed all my subjects. I had to repeat. Thank you very much, Katya. Number 1, move up. I had to move up to the next. I couldn't move up to the next grade. Let's take a look at number 2. Andy used to everybody and get them into trouble with the teacher. We said this is a very very annoying habit. And it happens between classmates and a lot of times between brothers and sisters. When you tell your parents, or in this case, you can tell a teacher. Does anyone have any ideas? Andy used to everybody and get them into trouble with the teacher. What did Andy used to do? Did he play around? Did he drop out? Did he SWAT up on? Did he fit in? Did he tell on someone? What did Andy do? Very good. Number 2, Andy used to tell on everybody. Let's take a look at number 3. I had a hard time and couldn't make friends easily. We said in the last slide that this is something that a lot of people need. They need to have, are you listening, Terrence? Oh, good. You've been so quiet. You said that in school, in all different levels of school, the students need a group of friends. You need to feel like you belong somewhere. Number 3, swat up on. I had a hard time swatting up on and couldn't make friends easily. Do you remember the last slide, Katya, where we said that it's important to feel like you fit in, like you have a group of friends, you have a place where you belong. And if you don't make friends easily, especially in school, bye, Andrea. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Thank you for joining us today. For those of you who would like to finish this slide, we'll just finish filling in the blanks. I had a hard time fitting in and couldn't make friends easily. We can finish, Katya. It's not a big deal. Number 4, many of my friends of high school, I was only a few who made it. So we said, which phrasal verb do we use if we stop high school? If we say, okay, that's enough, I'm not going to study anymore, which phrasal verb do we use? And number 4, that's okay, Elena. We're just going to finish up this slide about phrasal verbs, and then we're going to finish the focus, our last focus of before the weekend. Number 4 is many of my friends dropped out. Thank you, Katya. Thank you. Bye, Eric. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Number 5, my friends and I would, during gym class, we used to play pranks on our teacher and make everyone laugh. We said that this term we use when we don't take school seriously. When we don't take school seriously, what do we do? Bye, Terrence. Play around. Katya, you are amazing. Thank you so much. Katya, this is the last one. I loved history so much. I used to, and this is the phrasal verb, Katya, that you're looking for. This is your phrasal verb. We've used them all. And the last one is, I loved history so much, I used to swat up on. Fantastic, Katya. Okay, this is our last slide for today. We've gone over phrasal verbs that we use in a school setting. We went over would and used to that we always use in the past, either for things that used to be true or nostalgic events. Bye, Geneva. Thank you very much. And we talked about the differences between the U.S. school system and the Italian school system. I want to thank everybody very much for joining me this morning. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, a fantastic holiday, and we will see you again next time. Remember, we are live on YouTube and our Facebook page. Have a wonderful afternoon and see you soon.